What's up, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I'm your host, Mason Kinnahan. And oh boy, did Washington play a football game coming out of their bye week this week. It was going to be a tough matchup against the Denver Broncos, 9-2. It was going to be at home, though, Sunday Night Football, prime time. Many people were saying this game should have been moved outside of prime time. Well, it delivered. It delivered in prime time. A 27-26 overtime loss to the Denver Broncos. Washington is now 3-9 on the season and have lost 7 straight games. They have not won since they picked up the win in week 5 against the Los Angeles Chargers. Washington will be playing against the Vikings in week 13 next week. Week 14 next week. I don't know. This game was long. It is late. It is oh my. Let's jump into it because there is a lot to talk about in this game. It was a heartbreaker in primetime for Washington. Sunday Night Duel, they were very, very competitive against one of the best teams in the league currently. The Broncos, who are 10-2 and currently are tied, or I'll have to check, but are near the top of the AFC. If not, they're at the top of the AFC conference. And Washington got some guys back that were, injured. Terry McLaurin, most notably. You also got back Will Harris as well on the defensive side of the ball. And they delivered a really, really good game against one of the best teams in the league. This Washington team tonight showed that they still got some pieces that they showed why they were very good last year, is what happened tonight. And it was against a very good Denver defense. They put up 26 points, almost 28, if not for 15 in orange tonight. But it was a game that, Washington had to compete. They had to compete in. And we kind of knew going in it was going to be a one-score game. It was going to be low scoring. This one added extra overtime, so it was a little bit more high scoring than maybe I originally thought. But it was a game that Washington, I felt heading in, could be very competitive in and potentially could win. I predicted Washington to win this game heading into tonight at the beginning of the week. I felt like the vibes coming out of the bye week were very high. I felt like getting these guys back that were injured over the last couple of months during this losing streak, getting these guys back was huge for Washington. And the guys that, those guys delivered. They really delivered. And ultimately, it was rough. It was not exactly, the end result that maybe fans would have wanted, but it was a result that, I can live with. I really can. Washington is 3-9. We'll get into the tankathon stuff in a little bit, but let's talk about this game overall. I already kind of talked about it a little bit. I thought Washington played a great game. All 3 sides of the ball, I felt like played really well. Only 1 turnover, which was huge, and they matched the turnovers as well. I believe, yes, both teams with only 1 turnover. So no, turnovers weren't really a big issue. They have been in previous weeks. The defense, especially, I felt like stepped up. Even though the Denver scored 27 points in this one, I felt like the defense played a whole lot better, especially in the first 3 quarters than what they've been playing so far this season, and especially in the last few weeks heading into the bye weeks. So maybe, Dan Quinn taking over play calling duties has improved it a little bit. I still think personnel wise, you're not there yet defensively, but I felt like they've really improved. We had some stars shine on offense, including 17, Terry McLaurin, who had a big game. Well, we'll dive deeper into his performance, but it felt like, overall, this team played a lot better than they have been. This is the best game I felt like Washington played since the game against the Chargers, which was a 27-10 victory over a Chargers team that is now, 8-4, and second in the AFC West. So that's a good Chargers team that they beat, and they were very healthy for that one. Beyond missing a few starters on both sides, they were more healthy in that game than they were, during this losing streak. So I felt like Washington played really, really good for picking up another loss, which is their 7th in a row. I know there's no moral victories in this sport, but you got to be happy if you're Dan Quinn based on what this team gave you today coming out of the bye versus the performances that this team gave you heading into the bye, which was very lackadaisical and we saw some improvement in the Dolphins game, but overall, which just was very lazy and not energetic enough for a Dan Quinn team. So let's jump into the offense more specifically. Marcus Mariota getting the start again with Jane Daniels out. 28 of 50 for Mariota, 294 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick. He took a couple of sacks, also evaded a couple as well. He kept the game alive at the end. I know Washington ultimately lost this game, but the fourth down almost took a sack, somehow gets the ball away, and McNichols gets called for. Well, not he doesn't get called, but I believe it was Hufanga got called for defensive pass interference on McNichols. Somehow, some way, Marcus Mariota got the ball away and was able to do that. Mariota was also the leading rusher, 10 carries for 55 yards. I thought he scrambled pretty well and took what the defense was giving him, which again, going up against Denver, that pass rush, only taking 2 sacks in this one is huge. I felt like Mariota, I know Chris Collinsworth mentioned it in Next Gen Stats as well, kind of supported him on it, but Mariota got the ball out quickly. I felt it was a lot of times under 2 seconds. Now, there's a couple of times he almost threw a pick because of it, because he was getting the ball out too quickly. And, towards the end, it felt like Denver's secondary was starting to jump on some of the routes. But overall, getting the ball out quickly was a major success for Mariota. And then the interception was definitely a little rough. You held onto the ball for over 6 seconds before throwing a meatball really to the defense. So it's definitely been some ups and downs in this performance, but overall, especially in the clutch, in that final stretch in the fourth quarter and in overtime, I felt like Mariota played really well. Let's go to the passing game because I think that really shined. Zach Ertz in the first half and kind of in the first 3+ quarters, maybe a little bit. 10 catches, 106 yards on 13 targets. Look, Ertz maybe doesn't have the hands that he used to, but he's still a very reliable receiver for a guy like Mariota. As the number one option, Hurts isn't really it. But when you take some of the pressure off of him by adding a guy like Terry McLaurin into that receiver room, it allows for a tight end like Ertz to be a little bit more free in terms of what he's able to do and the coverage packages that he gets shown. So I felt like when Terry's on the field, it also kind of boosts up some of these other guys in the receiver / tight end room as well. And Ertz delivered again. He dropped the potential game winning touchdown, but it was, or was it the touchdown? I think we'll put tying touchdown in overtime. I'm mixing it up, but you guys remember what I'm saying. It was I think it was it, hold on. I now gotta check. Yeah, I guess they scored on the next play anyways to Terry, but there was a couple of drops like Ertz, was very uncharacteristic of him, but he is getting older and you don't know how much longer he has left. But overall, Terry, we got to talk about Terry. 7 catches, 96 yards for everybody's favorite wide receiver. Targeted 14 times. This is Terry's first game back, and he was targeted 14 times. That is huge. There was a lot of times when he's coming back off of an injury where it takes him a little bit to ramp up. It usually takes him a game or two before you see the big Terry game. But 7 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown. Potentially game-winning touchdown. But the overtime touchdown that he got, a great play design. Debo was able to screen off Terry's defender. They played man coverage. Worked out pretty well on that play. And Terry overall, I felt like had a really solid game. He was reliable. There was a couple of times that, just some good defense from the secondary. I felt like from Denver. And maybe if you had a little bit more zip on some of the balls, like Jaden has, then you could sneak them into tighter holes. But overall, it was a very, very good performance from Terry, and I was very impressed with him because, like I said, usually we don't see these performances out of him straight out of an injury or straight out of an injury recovery. So him putting up 7 catches, 96 yards and a touchdown showed to me that he's healthy. That even though he was on I have to look at the final snap counts, but it felt like he was on a little bit of a snap count restriction in this one. I felt like he still had a great game. Debo Samuel as well, 5 catches for 64 yards. 22 catches between Ertz, McLaurin, and Samuel. 22 of Mariota's 28 completions were from those three. For those three, and I mean those are Washington's top 3 targets. But it is cool to see this wide receiver slash tight end unit being fully healthy again and seeing the damage they can do. Because when they are healthy, they are a very good receiving unit. And this passing attack, we saw it last year. When they're healthy, they can be very, very good. So seeing the success that they had today, even with no Jaden, was really interesting, and I enjoyed it to watch. I've got to talk about Traylon Burks. All right, Burks, what an incredible snag in the end zone for that first touchdown, I believe, for Washington. Maybe it was the second touchdown for Washington. I think it was the second touchdown. I think about it, for Washington. But Traylon Burks, an incredible grab for him in the end zone with the broken middle finger and all. Unfortunately, that was the only catch for him tonight. He was targeted 4 times, only 1 catch. Definitely some things still to iron out. But Traylon Burks is still someone that I would love to have on this roster in 2026. He's an upcoming free agent, and he's someone that the Titans gave up on, but a former first-round pick that is very athletic and can go up and make plays like that. I haven't seen a Washington wide receiver go up and make a play like that. That's not Terry McLaurin in quite some time. So Washington needs someone that can do that, and Burks showed that he can, which is awesome to see. And yeah, so that's the receiving stuff. Rushing attack wise, again, Mariota was the leading rusher, 10 carries for 55 yards. Rodriguez, 11 carries for 41 yards. I thought he had a really solid game, especially going up against the defensive line that he was going up against. When the offense, I mean, this might sound obvious, but when the offensive line gave him some good holes to run through, Rodriguez took them, and he was able to pick up quite a few yards, especially in the first half. He kept Washington in the game. And again, Washington's rushing attack to me, is one of the best in the NFL, and the stats show it as well. And they continue to show it against, a really good rushing defense and a really good defensive line. Washington averaged over 4 yards per carry. They ran for over 140 yards on this one. It didn't really seem like it, but Washington had a really solid performance. McNichols averaged 5 yards per carry, and same with Bill Krosky-Merritt as well. So an impressive performance all around. I know this kind of got into a little bit of a shootout late as time was winding down, but when the run game was kind of in rhythm in the first 3 quarters or so, and Cliff Kingsbury got it going, I was really impressed by it. And so shout out to them. And also some of these designed runs with Mariota and some of these other run designs and just scrambles from Mariota throughout the game, I thought were really impressive. All right, let's go to the offensive line to wrap up the offense here. Offensive line wise, I have to look at the final. We'll see if PFF has them up, but I'll have to look at the final tally. I don't think. Well, I don't think. I would doubt that they have it up. Oh, they do. Okay, the pass rush. Let's see. Okay, so this is 5 pressures on Mariota tonight, which is great. Tunsil allowed a couple. Connolly allowed 1. Look, he got sacked a couple of times, but overall, I felt like this pass pro from these offensive linemen for Washington were really solid. Sam Cosmi, an 86.6 unofficial grade. We'll have to see what that final grade is tomorrow. But overall, again, really, really impressive stuff. I thought some of the blitz pickups as well from McNichols, which we've seen him before, what he can do blitz pickup wise was great. So shout out the offensive line. They protected for Marcus, and Marcus got the ball out quickly too. So that also helps this offensive line and their statistics after this one. Connolly, that was a pretty crucial holding call that set back a touchdown and almost set back Washington in total on that final drive. But that was really his only mistake. I felt like he had a really solid game against Jonathan Cooper and Nick Bonito. This is like one of the best pass rushing units in the NFL. And even though, I know for Washington wise, you might not be thinking, casual fans might not know who, Jonathan Cooper is, or, I mean, Benito, I feel like is becoming a pretty household name at this point, but these guys are really good, and they lead the league in sacks by a wide majority. And Mariota only taking 2 of them today was huge. Was huge. It kept Washington in it. Let's go now to the defense side of things, because defensively there were some things to like, some things to not so much like. Not so much like, we'll start with that, was the pass rush on Bo Nix. I felt like there wasn't really that much going. Frankie Luvu had the only sack on Nix. But it was also at the same time, Bo Nix was getting the ball out. He had a crazy Mahomesy-like throw for a touchdown, the first touchdown of the game for Bo. He was balling out there at times, and you still get some of those stupid decisions from Bo at this stage in his career. The interception to Bobby Wagner definitely stands out to me. No, I don't know how he didn't see Bobby. He was standing right in the window, and he threw it right to him. But helped out Washington. Bobby led the way with 8 tackles. He also had a pass defense as well. Sanderstill and Reeves each had 7 apiece. I felt like it was interesting. Darnell Savage was a healthy scratch in this one, with Will Harris coming back. That meant Quan Martin was also getting some of the snaps back as well. And I felt that safety duo was solid. Definitely, still some things to work on coverage wise, especially in man coverage. It was a pretty big issue for Washington, especially going up against a guy like Bo Nix, who is sneakily mobile a little bit, and can, run outside the pocket and knows when to take the space when it's given to him. You can't really play man coverage, and when you do, you have to be very, very responsible with your assignments and everything. And Washington wasn't, so they kind of mainly stuck the zone and ultimately got eaten alive in the fourth quarter and in overtime, especially the opening overtime drive, where that felt like that was the easiest drive for Denver throughout the entire game. I don't know if it was just because the players were gassed at that point, but it really felt like that drive was way too easy. And so ultimately, Washington lost. But the defense overall, I felt like played a lot better. They were getting to the ball carrier more. The defensive line was actually getting some movement on the offensive line, which we haven't seen in a little bit. The run defense, I felt like, was solid. You look at the stats for the Broncos, they only ran for 87 yards, 13 carries for 35 yards for RJ Harvey. He had a couple of long runs that boosted that number up, which were the 2 touchdowns. But Jaleel McLaughlin, 6 carries for 24 yards. I mean, Denver only rushed for 87 yards. Bo Nix threw the ball 45 times. And so, they were forced to pass. And this secondary still is not entirely great, but there's still some holes for sure. And it looked like as well, Mikey Sanders still was playing kind of inside and outside at times. Jonathan Jones as well, I felt like was playing on the outside. So they're kind of mixing and matching guys depending on the zone assignments. But I didn't feel like it was that bad. I know the Broncos offense had over 400 yards or close to 400 yards in this one, but I think they did have 400 yards. Yeah, 402. But I still felt like this Washington defense was pretty good. 7 of 15 on third down for Denver. I mean, compared to what we've seen over the last 8 weeks or 7 weeks, this is an improvement for Washington's defense. And by no means is it, average or above average, but it's not the worst in the entire league, and they're not allowing a touchdown every drive, which is helpful. So that definitely don't want to do that. And Washington's defense has stepped up a little bit and, gave Washington's offense a chance to win this game. Now, in the end, Washington's offense wasn't able to, but getting such a great opportunity like this one against a very good Denver team to potentially pick up a victory, I mean, you can't really ask for much more, especially with the season Washington has been having over the last few weeks, because it's been dreadful. It's really been dreadful. All right, let's continue moving now. Just final thoughts. I've said it before, but I just felt like this was a really solid game from Washington, and I'm happy with this performance in the end. Washington lost in overtime to a really good Denver team, and it would have been great. A primetime game at home. Washington hasn't been able to win any of those yet. They played the Bears at home on prime time, the Seahawks at home, and now the Lions was at home as well. That was in prime time, but that was a 4 o'clock game. And here Denver at home, they lost all of them. So hoping for maybe a prime time win at home because Washington got so many opportunities this year and they weren't able to do it. But you still have the Christmas Day game as well. But it's definitely, an improvement on what we've seen so far this season from the Commanders. Now, the loss does mean Washington falls to 3-9 on the season. So where does that put them in terms of the draft order? Currently, Washington has the 6th overall pick in the draft, which is pretty crazy because if you look at the top 7 picks, top 8 picks, top 8 picks, Washington is kind of the only team that has a franchise quarterback. You can maybe argue the Giants, right, with Jackson Dart, but you don't Cam Ward and the Titans, right? Cam Ward and the Titans with the number 1 pick have, the franchise quarterback or what they hope to be the franchise quarterback. But Washington knows what they have in Jane Daniels, and Daniels has shown that he can be that guy and be the franchise quarterback for Washington, which allows Washington to open up so many opportunities, potentially to trade back and things like that. The Commanders losing 7 in a row has helped them draft wise, and I know this isn't what Washington fans were hoping to hear on December 1st or even in November, but it has really helped them, and they're tied with the Browns, the Jets, and the Cardinals at 3-9 record wise. But due to their strength of schedule, they have the 6th overall pick. So 2 wins, the Saints, the Giants, and the Raiders, and then at 4 wins, the Rams, the Bengals, and the Vikings. If Washington were to have won this game, they would have had the 10th overall pick. So that kind of shows the difference of where things stand. There are still 6 games remaining on the Commanders' schedule. Next week against the Vikings, 1 o'clock on Fox. The following week against the Giants, a couple of away games coming up. And then the stretch of Eagles, Cowboys, Eagles to cap off the regular season and most likely the season overall for the 2025 Washington Commanders. But that'll wrap things up here on this week's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I've had a blast covering this team, and I'm looking to continue to do so here over the next couple of weeks. It's been great so far, even though it's been, a pretty terrible season. But that'll wrap things up here on this week's edition of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I've been your host, Mason Kinnahan. See you guys in the next one. Peace.